She was hanged, placed in her coffin, and already in the anatomy theater awaiting dissection when she quite literally rose from the dead. Welcome to Historical Horror, which is not only the genre of all the books that I write, but now a series in which I draw upon my two absolute favorite subjects to bring you the strangest, creepiest, darkest tales from our past. Let's talk about the woman who survived her own hanging, Anne Greene. So, mid-17th century, Oxford. Anne Greene is a young woman in her early 20s who works as a scullery maid in the household of Sir Thomas Reed, who is a justice of the peace in Oxfordshire. And Anne would later claim that in 1650, she had been seduced by Reed's teenage grandson, after which she fell pregnant. Although she claimed she actually had no idea she was even pregnant until she miscarried in a privy 6 months in. In a panic, Anne hid the remains, but they were soon discovered, and when they were traced back to her, she was suspected of infanticide. Unfortunately, her employer, Reed, decided to press charges against her. And in spite of the testimony of a midwife who stated that the child was too underdeveloped to have been born alive, Anne was sadly convicted of infanticide and condemned to death. And on the morning of December 14th, 1650, she was brought to the gallows at Oxford Castle, where she was hanged. And according to contemporary accounts, it was a particularly unpleasant hanging. In the 17th century and prior, hanging was a messy, imprecise, even more ghastly affair than it would be in centuries to come. The long drop method, where you hope that the neck breaks in the fall, hadn't been implemented yet. So hanging basically amounted to a slow, suffocating struggle at the end of a rope. And unfortunately, and rather grotesquely, Anne did not meet a quick death. She struggled at the end of her noose for almost half an hour, despite the efforts of her friends, to whom she had previously put the request that they help expedite her death by pulling on her legs and weighing her down. After what must have been a truly horrific half hour, Anne was finally declared dead. Her body was cut down, placed in a coffin, and delivered to the Oxford physicians William Petty and Thomas Willis, and thereafter transferred to the anatomy theater for dissection. However, when Petty and Willis opened her coffin, they noticed something. Petty records that when her coffin was opened, quote, "She was observed to breathe, and in breathing, obscurely to rattle." Anne Greene was alive. She had miraculously survived her hanging. Petty and Willis immediately called their Oxford colleagues, and the group of doctors at once set about reviving Anne. They poured hot cordials down her throat. They rubbed her limbs to warm them. They even applied poultices of pigeon guts to her chest. And against all odds, Anne quickly began to revive. After 14 hours, she was able to speak. After 4 days, she was able to eat solid food. And within 1 month, she had fully recovered, aside from a bout of amnesia, which made her forget everything around her execution, which was probably a mercy, let's be real. And here's the kicker. In the 17th century, what happened to Anne was not considered a mistake. It was considered divine intervention. The judges believed that her survival was proof of her innocence, that God had quite literally intervened to save her life. Even more ironically, her employer, Justice Reed, the man who had brought charges against her, had died 3 days after her hanging, which was taken as further proof of God's divine will and Anne's innocence. This is the 17th century. You don't want to go against God's will, nope. And so the judges issued her a full pardon, and she was set free. She went on to marry, have 3 children, and live for many more years. She even got to keep her coffin as a souvenir. There's certainly much of this story that reads like horror. The twisted pursuit of justice against a woman who had miscarried, the grotesque hanging, the coffin, the anatomy theater, the physicians gunning for dissection, the twitch of the corpse, the rattle of breath. To us, it feels like horror, but to them, it was justice, the ultimate trial by ordeal. Anne Greene didn't just escape the gallows. She was resurrected by Providence itself. They may be few and far between, but every once in a while, a horror story has a happy ending.